Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the GG Reports. I'm glad you're tuned in. Welcome to today's discussion, conversations. Today, we're going to address ourselves to the challenge of leadership in Africa. Africa has been cast as a place, a platform of all kinds of leadership challenges, weaknesses. Democracies in Africa are seen as weak, inadequate, corrupt. Africa is associated with some of the remaining dictatorships. We have seen, challenges of all kinds, economic, social, and amazing, cross-section of issues that plague our continent. And it all seems to boil down to the challenge of leadership, or as many people seem to argue. And today we want to explore that subject. We want to ask ourselves, what exactly is the problem of leadership in Africa? And to help me address that challenge is my guest today, Pete Odeng. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Very good.
Yes.
Yeah, I had Peter Odeng on an earlier episode show that aired on my Facebook page those days. And I'm glad that Peter Pete is agreed to come on the show. And today we're going to really discuss many issues. And I want to remind you that the GG Report is a platform where we have big, bold conversations, honest conversations. We tell it as it is. We do not want to spare ourselves. We really want to go all the way. And Peter is a very bold man. He's going to tell us what he thinks about the problem of leadership in Africa. Now, let me just introduce to you Peter briefly before I ask him to tell us more about himself. Peter Odeng is an interesting man. He entered himself on the presidential election in 2017 and as an aspirant. And that's a really amazing story. And he did kind of call off his campaign after a few months, but he was there in the game. At present, Peter is the Chief Operating Officer of Life in Abundance International. This is a church-centered ministry that serves the poor in 14 African countries and the Caribbean. And so he has a wealth of experience in international organizations, local organizations, public and private sector. Peter, I would like you to, just feel free to tell us your story. And good, welcome.
Thank you. Well, I am so glad to be back on your show again.
Yes.
I really enjoyed our last conversation and I felt it didn't quite reach a conclusion. Maybe there is no end to this discussion.
Yeah, so we still have a lot of unfinished conversation on that.
Yes.
So let's start from the start. You studied accounting and auditing in the US as a young man. And then give us your career background in terms of your studies in the US, how long you stayed there, what you learned, how you ended up in the corporate sector, both public, non-profit organization. So give us that background.
Okay, thank you. Very briefly, I did study accounting.
Yes.
And I always tell people I'm an accountant by training, but not in spirit.
Okay.
Yeah, I started out as an auditor. Actually, my journey to the United States was, I may have shared this in the past.
Yes.
It was through the gift of an American family.
Okay.
Whose son had died. And they were living out here in Kenya.
Okay.
And when their son died, they decided that they wanted to use the money that they had saved up for their son to put me through college.
Okay.
So I went to the States on what you'd call an unmerited gift from a very gracious family.
Okay.
I studied accounting, and by grace, I got a very good job with McDonald's Corporation.
Oh, right.
That was one of the most recognized American companies.
Okay.
I was in their headquarters in Chicago working as an internal auditor.
Okay.
And an interesting thing happened. My boss, who was an African-American gentleman, came into my cubicle where I was sitting.
Yes.
And he said McDonald's was under some pressure from media and other places
Yes.
to increase the number of Blacks, Hispanics, women in its upper ranks.
Okay.
They were under pressure for what they call the affirmative action program.
Okay.
And so he says, we have been instructed to identify people in the organization who can be put on a fast track.
Okay.
And I have identified you.
All right.
And then he went on to explain to me, over the next 5 years, this is going to be your path.
Okay.
Up the ranks.
Okay.
And by the end of 5 years, you're going to be here.
Yes.
It was amazing for someone to actually walk you through your career and just to show you where you're going to land in 5 years.
Okay.
Now, this was supposed to be very good news for me.
All right.
But it was actually very disturbing news.
Yes.
Because I had been in the United States for almost 8 years.
Yes.
And when I went to the States, I had actually determined that I wanted to come back home.
Okay.
And if I was to live in the States, I wanted to make that decision from here.
All right.
Rather than go to the States and just never come back.
Okay.
I knew so many people who had gone and just disappeared.
Disappeared.
And so I sat there thinking, if I accept this offer,
yes,
either I forget about going home,
okay,
or I accept it on a lie.
Okay.
They will be thinking that I'm working with them, but actually I'm just doing this for a few years and then I would be leaving them to go back home.
Yeah, at one point you just decide, tell them, no, look,
yes,
I really never meant to pull through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that wasn't fair. So what I ended up doing was resigning.
Okay.
And of course my boss was shocked.
Yeah.
I tendered my resignation and began to wind up my time in the US.
Okay.
I came back to Kenya and was fortunate to get a job with one of the international agencies. Actually, it was an American agency.
Okay.
The USAID.
All right.
I worked with them for a few years.
Okay.
And that is where I veered off the accounting track.
Okay.
And you know, it's very interesting. Many people will go and study a certain subject.
Yes.
And that subject, instead of opening them up, it becomes almost like a prison. You know, I am an accountant.
Yes.
But for me, it was a platform that allowed me to go into any direction.
Okay.
So I moved into this space of international development.
Yes.
And one thing led to another. And I've worked with a number of organizations over the years. Because I'm gifted in writing, that is something God gave me.
Okay.
I began to write and publish and put out certain things, which also propelled me in the area of business development.
Okay.
I put out a book in 1990. I don't know where you were.
Yeah, 1990. If you managed to put together a book in 1990, you just are amazing, man.
It was called How to Start Your Own Small Business.
Oh,
yeah,
that's interesting.
And it was sort of a challenge I'd given to myself. But when I put it out there, remember then we didn't have internet, we didn't have email, we didn't have ATMs. It was another world altogether.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So I put this book out, and that book opened up a lot of doors for me in the area of business development, microfinance,
yes,
and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So I've worked with Faulu Kenya.
Okay.
Faulu was then a small organization. I worked as a CEO.
Okay, so that was the founding of
yes,
Faulu? Or
I didn't found it. I was brought on as the first African. It was founded by an international NGO.
Yes.
Called Food for the Hungry International. It
Yes.
was just a program.
Yeah.
But then I had the privilege of institutionalizing it.
Okay.
And expanding it.
Yes.
Then a door opened for me miraculously.
Yes.
Something I did not pursue.
Yeah.
To go to the Netherlands.
Okay.
For 4 years.
Okay.
Where I lived with my family, my wife and 2 sons.
Yes.
Working as the Africa director for one of these impact investment organizations.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was traveling around the continent, but living in Europe.
Okay.
Yeah, and then came back to Kenya after 4 years and ended up being engaged by President Kibaki in his new government.
Okay.
The new NAC government.
That was interesting.
Yeah, to set up a secretariat.
Okay.
A regional secretariat for something was referred to as NEPAD, the New Partnership for Africa's Development.
Yes.
You remember that? Maybe we can talk about that later.
I remember that NEPAD.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I worked for government for about 4 years.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great.
And then
So Pete, actually, I think that is a very interesting background. Mm-hmm. So because you had a chance, first of all, as a young man in the US, mm-hmm. so you learned, you had the experience of living in America, which basically is the West mm-hmm. proper. And then again, you came back here. You had experience here in terms of setting up organization, institutionalizing a very young organization that time, Fauru. And then you had the chance now to work in Europe.
Yeah.
So you have a very, very good view of, what it is like, working in the West and what it is like working here in Kenya and in Africa. And again, we're going to go back to, we'll go back to the story of your experience in Europe, managing affairs of programs here in Africa.
Right.
We'll get back to that. So tell us about your experience now, leadership experience, because I believe it's around that time you began now to see, your eyes began to open to see what it really means to operate at the top level in corporate and in public sector, and as an influencer, as a leader. What sort of experience did that give you?
I think we all have different journeys, and yes, my journey has given me an opportunity to see, to experience, and also to be part of Western style leadership.
Yes.
And also to work with organizations in Africa.
Yeah, right.
At a leadership level.
Yes.
And one thing I can say, that the whole subject of leadership, because it is so often defined using Western language, Western examples.
Yes.
When we talk about leadership, and even books that are written on leadership are mostly written by people who have a Western perspective.
Yes.
In a way, we have not really appreciated
yes.
what our potential is.
Yes.
Or even explored how to strengthen what we have.
Okay.
We have tended to judge ourselves and to also compare ourselves to what others are doing.
Yes.
So in a way, we vilify ourselves and,
yes.
and say that we are failures.
Yes.
When in fact, what we're doing is we're abandoning who we are.
Right.
To pursue something else.
Okay.
In the West, there is a certain individualism.
Right.
There's a certain sort of bravadoism that has taken over that culture.
Yes.
And so leadership has become about me, the leader.
Yes.
We talk about courage and this and that. And
yes.
And in some way, we've lost that sense of community.
Yes.
That leadership is not about the individual.
Yes.
Leadership is about the people you lead.
Absolutely. You can say that again, because the way I also seem to understand leadership in my journey of studying and also being a leader in my own space. It appears to me that leadership is really about being the embodiment of a vision for others, giving the direction, having not just influence. Okay, so leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. That's Maxwell's maxim.
Yes.
But it's more than that. It's like carrying out the vision, being the embodiment of a vision and a direction. So, and I think we all have that potential.
Yes.
Maybe the groups may differ, the size of influence we have may differ, but we all have that sense of.
Correct.
And so you say that the challenge sometimes is us discovering our potential as leaders and bringing that out.
What I'm really saying is, and I totally agree with you, that leadership is about influence.
Yes.
Now, everybody can influence.
Yes.
In fact, everybody has an opportunity to influence.
Okay.
But in a football team, only one person can be the captain.
Yes.
And so that captain, I believe that kind of leadership is a calling, actually.
Yes.
Not everybody is called. Not everybody is equipped.
Yes.
Not everybody has what it takes to be at the front end
of
an organization.
Yes.
But yes, influence is what leadership is all about.
Yes.
And a lot of times we find ourselves focusing so much on the individual leader.
Yes.
That we forget that actually an organization or a nation or a body or a team of people everybody must understand their contribution to the whole.
Okay.
that you are an influence in the area that you're called in.
Yes.
And so we're not just saying everything depends on that top leader.
Yes.
It's a total thing. And that leader, when you say embodiment of a vision,
Yes.
the leader who is called to lead a team
Yes.
has the responsibility
Yes.
of enhancing the influence of each one of these people
Exactly.
and being able to mesh them so that everybody is part of that vision that they have signed themselves up to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's really like the very core of leadership.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not about the individual leader,
Right.
but it's about the welfare of the whole.
Of the whole. Exactly.
And then there are levels and ranks
Mhm.
within that system.
Right.
But the leader has a responsibility to ensure that every subsystem of the group of the community
Mhm.
is working towards the same apex direction, vision, and the goal of the entity, the organization.
That is correct. And where many corporate leaders and many organizational leaders get it wrong
Yeah.
is they sometimes can become so caught up with strategy and goals and structures and things like this
Yes.
and forget that leadership is about people.
Yes.
And that it is when people are motivated, people are inspired, when people feel belonging,
Yes.
when people feel that they buy into what you're talking about,
Yes.
when people have trust,
Yes.
not just in you, but in each other,
Yes.
that's when you can push an enterprise forward.
Yeah.
That's when you push a nation forward.
Yes.
Yes, that's really the essence of excellence in leadership.
Yeah. So it is, the leader becomes like a catalyst.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
like that.
Yes.
And those, I'm putting words into your mouth.
Yeah.
So, what was it like when you were working in Europe?
Mhm.
You had a responsibility over Africa.
Yeah.
What are some of the lessons you picked up there?
You know, that was a really fascinating experience because I landed in the Netherlands
Okay.
and I was incorporated as part of a small leadership team.
Okay.
And this organization works in different parts of the world. So it has programs in Latin America, Asia,
Yeah.
Eastern Europe,
Yes.
and Africa.
Yes.
So in the leadership team, you have the director for Latin America, the director for Asia,
Yes.
and so on. And here's Pete. I'm representing Africa.
Okay.
And we would travel, we go to our projects, we meet our teams, and we would deal with our issues. And once a month, we'd come together.
Right.
And to put our heads together and to hear each other out. And so I'd listen to my colleague from Latin America.
Yes.
And he's telling stories about this hurricane came or this issue, there was a flood or something. And maybe the organization we had given money to
Yeah.
needed the loan to be maybe rescheduled or something.
Yeah.
Or somebody had died or this kind of thing.
Yes.
And so we'd come up with solutions. Then the guy from Asia would tell us his story.
Yes.
And he'd have some technical issues, or maybe the business plan was a bit unrealistic and we had to revise and, this kind of thing.
Yes.
Then they would turn to me and say, Pete, what are the issues you're facing?
In Africa.
And again and again, I would find myself wondering, why is it that when I talk about mine, my issues are always things to do with integrity, or something to do with somebody who stole some money or ran away with, somebody gave a promise but didn't fulfill the promise.
Wow.
Or there was a fraud that has, we gave money to a cooperative and the top leadership have somehow disappeared with the money.
Yeah.
Or they gave us a collateral for a loan. And now when we're calling on the collateral, you find it's fake. Maybe there's 2 or 3 title deeds to the same piece of land.
Okay.
So I said, what is wrong with these people? And every time I wanted to point and say, what is wrong with these people?
Yeah.
I couldn't do it because these people were me.
All right.
So I would say, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
Because I seem to represent something that is different.
Yes.
There's something that we are embracing, something we're pursuing, something that is shaping us.
Yeah.
That is not good for us.
Right.
Yes. The
story appeared to be absolutely, it's different.
Yes.
And it seems to hinge around issues to do with people, the honesty issues, people coming through on their promises, challenges of a project failed because, certain things were not in place and people didn't do what they said they would do. And that story kept on repeating itself.
And this was about leadership.
Yes.
And I have seen it play out across, even in my country here, Kenya.
Yes.
Where, we have come to glorify people who are crafty.
Right.
Not only are we suffering from it, we actually tend to admire and look at people who find their way to the top.
Okay.
And use positions for self-gain.
Yes.
To manipulate.
Yes.
To benefit.
Yeah.
And somehow we don't hold them to account.
Mm-hmm.
And this becomes a culture over time.
Yes.
And in fact, you begin to operate in a society where that becomes the norm.
Right.
If I put you in a dark room.
Right.
And I keep you there long enough.
Yes.
It becomes normal.
Yeah. You can adapt to it.
Adapt to it.
Yes.
And that is a tragedy.
That's the tragedy.
That in leadership, we have actually began to adapt ourselves to leaders who don't actually care about the people they lead.
Okay.
Leaders who are using their positions for self-gain and self-benefit.
Yes.
And using or abusing or manipulating people.
Right.
And people are accepting this as the standard of leadership.
Right.
That is a tragedy.
Absolutely. That's a real tragedy.
Yeah.
That we have accepted such a low standard of leadership. And sometimes we seem to be comfortable with it because we think maybe, and especially the political, kind of leadership where if your man is in charge, that if you have some connections, you could benefit from, that connection. So it's like we seem to tolerate it, and it's like we're always pushing and shoveling to place our person somewhere in position of privilege and leadership, because we know that will work in our interest. We as the followers are happy with that arrangement because we think we can leverage that arrangement.
I think what you're referring to is our tendency to rally around ethnic blocks and ethnic leadership and so on.
Yes.
Where I think that comes from.
Yes.
I think it comes from an innate desire to belong.
Yes.
Yes. We want to be represented by our leaders.
Yes.
And when you have a multi-ethnic society like Kenya, 42 tribes.
Yes.
People speaking different languages, having different traditions, having different languages, different ways of life.
Right.
They want to belong somewhere.
Yes.
And the lowest common denominator is my tribe.
Yeah, my language.
That if somebody who looks like me, speaks like me, acts like me is in leadership, I feel a sense of belonging.
Yes.
It's a challenge for national leaders to rise above that and to be able to extend this sense of ownership to everybody else.
Across the board.
Exactly.
And I think so what you're basically saying is that one of the challenge, if I were to, kind of extract it from that, one of the challenges is leaders that transcend the tribal identities. I mean, people who can operate above that. It's true that there is that sense of belonging. We cannot deny our identity groupings, our tribe, our language, our culture. Those are things that define us in a way that is important. So I wouldn't buy the idea that tribe itself is the enemy.
No, it's not.
Because we first of all belong to a family, then that family expands into a community. Communities form a tribe, a community. You share language, culture, food, practice, and that's how, as a community, you're able to function.
Right.
So there isn't something wrong with that.
No, there
but
isn't.
We're saying that if we are going to exist in a nation state that consists of all of us, then our leaders have to rise above.
Right.
And
we haven't succeeded in that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we give lip service to it.
Yes.
And just like in an organization,
yes,
you can have an inspirational leader.
Yes.
Who stands up and says, our vision is this, our mission is this.
Yes.
But that lady over there or that man over there don't feel part of it.
Yes.
And your job is to make them feel part of this thing.
Absolutely.
And if they don't feel part of it, they're actually hurting even your pursuit of that vision.
That's true.
Because they're not walking with you.
Yeah, you're missing the ability to leverage
Yes.
their presence, their contribution.
Right.
And so you're saying even in the corporate sector or
Yes.
whatever organization it is,
Right.
as a leader, you must pay attention to the individuals, the little maybe subunits
Yes.
of the organizations that are needed to contribute, to come into to the same place, the same vision. You have to be able to rally people.
Yes, and perhaps even more so now
Yes.
than in the past.
Okay.
I believe leadership in the past, especially corporate organizational leadership,
Yes.
tended to be about structure, stability, and predictability. You know, people came up with models of how to organize and how to manage and so on.
Yes.
We're living in an era of uncertainty.
Absolutely.
We're walking into a forest that we don't know.
Yes.
And right now, when there's so much unclarity of where we're going,
Yes.
more so now than ever, we need trust, we need hope,
Yes.
we need a sense of purpose.
Yes.
And this is what leaders need to rise to.
Yes.
That don't just say, I'm a lion, you know, I'm going to roar or whatever it is. Be the lion, you know.
Be the lion.
Be the lion. You don't have to tell me. But you also have to earn my trust.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we just are about to go into a break. I like what you're saying. I like what you're saying. We're going to revisit that.
Okay.
We want to go on a short break. When we come back, we're going to ask Pete Odeng to speak into that idea of that leadership has shifted now because of the dynamics. You know, in the old days, you know, a few years ago, structure systems worked, but we live in a very unpredictable environment, and the leadership now is needed more than ever. So we want to go on to a break. Please, you have numbers on the screen which you can use to send us a text or a comment or call. And if you need some help, you have a question, you're free to ask that kind of question, and we will look at it and we can respond to it. Remember, this is being shared on all our platforms. So stay tuned. We go into a break. When we come back, we go back to the idea of leadership and how it has changed in the context of our very unpredictable times. Okay, see you in a short while.